Hey guys, it's me, Laura, and today we are going to create some faux sapphire, rubies, and emeralds in resin, and then add in a little polymer clay. So let's get started. So right here in front of you, you have a little bit of my resin. And this resin, in this video, I don't show you the use of rubber gloves, but I highly recommend you do that. I also highly recommend that you wear some glasses and ventilate. This stuff gives off an odor and it gets rather warm when it's curing. So please take that into consideration. And I want to let everyone know that all the details about what exact products I used can be found underneath this video in the description area. Check that out because there may be possible links to those products in there as well. Also, for the wee ones out there, the kiddos, please have an adult help you with this. We want to keep you safe. Okay, so let's move on. All right, so we have our resin and we have our alcohol ink. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to take that resin and we're going to place a little bit in a little plastic cup. You don't have to measure this out, just have a little bit in the cup and don't put a ton in there. Resin can get expensive, so use a little bit at a time. And I take I want to say 1 drop of my alcohol ink in this cup. So right about there. And then take your toothpick and you're going to go ahead and stir that in. And you're going to mix it in really well. You want it to have not a swirled effect, but you want it to look like it's uniformly all one blue color. If you want it to be a little darker or a little lighter, you're going to add more resin to make it lighter, and you're going to add maybe a little more ink if you want it to be darker. Frankly, I don't know. I kind of like the lighter version, but experiment and see which way you like it. Okay, so this looks like it's pretty mixed in, but we're going to add a little bit more. Like I said, I like the lighter version. And we're just going to add in a little bit more of that resin. And again, just mixing that in until you get a uniform color. Okay, so now we're going to take our resin mold and we're going to place that down in front of you. I like this particular one because it looks like faceted gemstones, this resin mold, and you're going to pour that resin that you just mixed into one of those molds. All right, now that you have that in the mold, use your toothpick to spread that around and make it so it's kind of evened all the way throughout. If you have to, try and get as much resin as possible out of that cup and into that mold. If you don't have quite enough, use a little bit more resin, just maybe a dab or so, and put that into the actual mold. And you can stir it right in the mold as well. Okay, so now that you've got the resin in there, you're going to take either a lighter or matches, whichever you have. I'm using matches here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lightly take that flame and put it right over the surface of that resin. This is going to bring up bubbles in the resin that you might have mixed in while you were mixing your alcohol ink into it. And in doing so, it'll bring the bubbles out. Now, in this particular resin video, this is not necessarily crucial, but I kind of do this as a matter of course. So once that's done, we're now going to take our piece and we're going to put that under a UV light for about 3 to 4 minutes. Once this is done, let the item sit for a little bit so it can cool off. And then you can go ahead and take it right out of its mold. I'm just going to move my lamp here. Take that right out of my mold, just pops right out. And there you go. And this one's fairly dark, but I don't know, it looks pretty cool. We're going to go ahead and then tin foil, people, tin foil. Take that and wrap that around, make sure it's all crinkled up. I like to have more crinkles, but don't compress it too tightly because you might have a hard time trying to get it back apart again. All right, now that we got this crumpled up kind of the way I like it, I'm going to go ahead, lay that down on your surface and yeah, flatten it out fairly decently, but not too much. And then with a little bit of super glue, I'm going to go ahead and put that on the back of your gem piece there and place that down on the tin foil. This is going to give you that faceted kind of look to make a so-called faux sapphire. Here I am using my ball style tools to press the gem onto the tin foil. And you don't have to use these. You can use the end of another tool so long as it's metal to push the tin foil and gem into greater contact with each other. The reason I don't use my fingers is so if the gem did not cure properly under the light, I will not be getting that resin on my fingers. Okay, so now I'm going to take my small scissors here and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut this gem out from the tin foil. At first, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to do a kind of a rough cut around it just to get the main part of this tin foil away from my gem piece. Okay, so here's the thing. I know you're going to be doing a lot of cutting with this on the tin foil, and eventually your scissors will get dull. So here's a tip. Go ahead and use the bottom of a coffee cup or some kind of mug that has a porcelain, or even the bottom of your tile, the underside. It's coarse and rough, and just scuff your scissors up along that and it will sharpen them in no time. Bringing this more into the light, you really see the facets from that tin foil now, and it looks more and more like faux sapphire. Okay, so we're going to move on now to our faux rubies. Woohoo! All right. So a little bit of resin in our plastic cup, another plastic cup. Put a dot of your alcohol ink on top of this, only one dot. This way then you can judge how much resin you want to put in this cup, and you're not going to be wasting that resin if you get too much or too little. You just want enough to fill in that one particular mold. And again, you're just going to go ahead and mix this in until you have a uniform color. Now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and fill in the mold we want with our nice red color. Now that's all filled in, you usually would go ahead and take the lighter and again take the bubbles out, but I didn't do it here and I thought that would be okay. We're going to just try one and see how it looks in difference to the sapphire. Now let's go ahead and take this particular piece and put it under our light for 3 to 4 minutes. Now we're going to pop our faux ruby right out of that particular mold. And you can see I did a nice little teardrop. I like that. Looks pretty good too. Again, taking your tin foil, you're going to go ahead and in this case I'm just kind of fitting it just so you can kind of see the facets behind there. Ooh, I like it. All right, so this time I am not going to glue that particular gem to the tin foil. Instead, I'm just going to cut away the tin right away. This way then, I don't have to worry about that glue so much. And once I cut that away, I can trim it up right to the stone, which when I discovered doing this, I liked it a whole lot more. Just easier to deal with. So now that I've got that, yeah, that's a whole lot easier. Take your glue, glue the back, and then put that back down onto your tin foil. Now that I have that put down pretty nicely and the super glue is adhered fairly well to the gem, you could go ahead and trim that up. And this worked out actually a little bit easier for me than just like gluing it down beforehand. Now I have my faux ruby. We'll clean this up and move on to the next one, our emeralds. Now here you might notice I'm going ahead and after the last two I wanted to go ahead and clean up my resin mold. And I'm using a baby wipe there. It just makes it a whole lot easier. It cleans it all out and it's all good. It takes off the excess resin that didn't necessarily cure either. All right, now we take again our resin and our alcohol ink and we'll put a little bit in our cup and 1 dot of our green alcohol ink and have some fun stirring it up. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and place that green resin into our mold. Now we'll once again take that lighted match or any kind of lighter and just lightly go over the surface of that resin, bringing up the air bubbles underneath. Now bring in your UV light and place that under there for 3 to 4 minutes. And pop your little emerald piece right out of the mold. There you go. Excellent. You will now take this piece and glue and trim it to your tin foil. And once that's done, we'll move on to the next part. So here we have our faux emerald, our faux sapphire, and finally our faux ruby. And I also noticed when I was doing this, there really was no difference because I did not take the bubbles out of the ruby. So something to consider. Now let's put these stones into some polymer clay. All right, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is bring in a separate tile that I'm going to use for baking. And I'm going to roll out my black clay and I'm going to make pretty much this nice long kind of snake. This thing is going to go around, or I should say wrap around my gemstone, creating a nice little bezel. So as you can see here, I went ahead and made a little curl on the top, and then I'm making a little ball to put in that curl. I'll take a knitting needle, make a hole, and then we'll go ahead and place one of those rhinestones right in there. Okay, now for this one, we're going to go ahead and make another long snake for our faux ruby so we could create that bezel. And we're going to wrap that around this little teardrop shape. And with my needle tool, I'll cut off the end and then bring this other piece around, and again, creating another little curl right on top. You couldn't see it with the sapphire so much, but with this one, you probably can. And then I just kind of tuck that in somehow. It's just it's fiddling with it so much. There we go. And then just cut off the excess. And now I'll go ahead and make a little ball and place that in there, make a hole, and then that'll be ready for a rhinestone. In the meantime, take another little bit, I'll make it into a ball, and then I kind of pinch the end and then drag a little line up to create a little leaf. And I'll create a couple of those on this piece. Okay, so now I'm making a couple more little balls. I'm just going to place those around where the leaves join in, and then of course make little dots in those balls. Now on to my emerald. Yes. And we're going to make another little snake. And just make that long enough so this thing is going to go and wrap around our little faux emerald piece. Now trying to wrap this around my emerald is a little bit more tricky because there's, how do I say, straight lines. So I was always better with the curves. Anyway, so we're just wrapping this around, and again, I'm just cutting, and this one I'm cutting off just flush. And I cut that flush because I figure I don't necessarily need to have that little extra part of the snake. Instead, I'll just put a tiny little ball right where that juncture is. And again, make that little insert of a dot from my knitting needle. And then I go ahead and take another little bit, and we're just going to make another one of those little tiny leaves. Drag the line down and place that right near the ball. And there you have all three pieces bezeled. Place in your rhinestones and place this in the oven at 275 or 300 depending upon which type of polymer clay you are using. Once you have that done, go ahead and we're going to flatten out some black clay, and this is going to be to back those gemstones. You're going to take an eye pin and you're going to create what I call like a little hook, and then you're going to clip off the end and then take that eye pin and place that right off the edge of that black clay if you can. There you go. And then push it down into the clay. This way then when you go ahead and put this down, you're going to have a nice way for that hook to catch in the clay and it won't slip out and then your whole pendant piece will fall apart. And do this for all three pieces. Make sure it's embedded in that clay. But again, you're just making that little hook and then placing it right up there, pushing that down. And then each of the gemstones, a little bit of Superglue right on the back on that tin foil. And the clay, just kind of going around the edges, making sure it's well coated. And then place that down onto the fresh clay. Once you have that, you're going to go ahead and take your needle tool and you're just going to trace the outline of your gemstone piece. And rip away your black clay, and there you have your backed pieces. trim them up as much as possible with your needle tool. And then again, go ahead and rebake these pieces once again at 275 or 300, depending upon which polymer clay you are using. So here I have my 3 pieces that I just finished creating, and you can see the little leaves and everything on them. Absolutely a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, I hope you'll like, subscribe, and leave a comment. You know, thoughts or ideas are always welcome. And please, guys, as always, I'm sending out my biggest hugs to you all. Have a great day.